Hey guys, just me, Mr. Plazik. What I'm going to talk a little bit about today is the intro to biochemistry. We kind of worked through that first pack, and I'm kind of going to reiterate some things in case if you were confused on that first introduction to biochemistry packet. So when we take a look at elements of the human body, or the major elements that compose us, we look at the top 4 elements that are found in the human body. We can see oxygen comprises 65% of our total body weight. Carbon composes 18.5% of our body weight. Hydrogen is going to compose about 9.5% of our body weight, and nitrogen composes 3.2% of our total body weight. So it's these 4 elements, oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen, that make up the bulk of us as far as elements are concerned. So these are the 4 major elements that we're kind of really concerned with when we're dealing with biochemistry. One in particular that we're really focused in is on the carbon atom. Is one atom that we're really going to be focused on when we deal with this biochemistry that we talk about in this particular unit in Chapter 2. So when I take a look at this Chapter 2 packet. So this is that Chapter 2 packet that we kind of did in class. It's kind of introducing you to biochemistry. It's talking a little bit about how chemical reactions are the basis for what makes organisms alive and control us beyond our wildest imaginations. There's some chemical properties that make proteins. They bend and fold into 3D shapes and determine how your blood will clot or whether your hair will be straight or curly. There's almost no end to the chemical reactions that we take for granted. So inside of our body, we have a lot of reactions going on. We have catabolic reactions and we have anabolic reactions going on. This is making up our metabolism that we have. One of the major elements that our body's composed of is carbon, and carbon is a molecule that makes up a lot of biomolecules. And what would you guess a biomolecule to be? Well, a biomolecule is a molecule of life, is basically what it is. Or a molecule of the living is what we would call it as far as a biomolecule is concerned. There's a branch of chemistry that's devoted completely to carbon-containing compounds, and we call this organic chemistry. So organic chemistry is a branch of chemistry that's devoted nearly entirely to compounds that contain carbon. Organic refers to organisms, so this is kind of like the chemistry of the living. Another branch of chemistry is called inorganic chemistry, and that's going to be the chemistry of the non-living. So you have organic chemistry, and then you have inorganic chemistry. When we look at carbon, we can see this on a periodic table. We look at a periodic table, we see that it has an atomic number of 6. It has a mass number of 12.011. This is the chemical symbol, which is C. And this is the element's name, which is carbon. That's right there. Okay, so when you look at carbon, carbon has an atomic number of 6, and this atomic number of 6 is going to tell you that how many protons that it has. So this atomic number that's right up here is going to tell you that it has 6 protons and that it has 6 electrons. So 6 protons and 6 electrons is what we have inside of carbon. The mass number is the atomic mass rounded to the nearest whole number. So if we take this atomic mass, we round it to the nearest whole number, it's going to be 12. Okay. The number of electrons, the number of neutrons is the mass number minus the number of protons. So I take 12 minus 6, and that's going to give me 6. That tells me how many neutrons are going to be in this particular carbon. So carbon has 6 protons, 6 electrons, has a mass number of 12. The number of neutrons is going to be 6 when we take a look at it. When I got that number of neutrons, I took this 12 minus 6 there. On your test, on your quiz, you're going to have to be able to do that. These particles have charges that are associated with them. So these particles have charges that are associated with them. So we take a look at these particles have a charge that's associated with them. Electrons have a negative charge. Okay, so electrons have a negative charge. And these electrons hang out in these shells that move around the atom's nucleus. The first shell or energy level is filled with 2 electrons. The second shell fills with 8 electrons, as does the third. Carbon has how many electrons again? We come back up here, we see carbon has 6 electrons. So we can represent carbon like this. So we can see here is kind of an electron shell diagram of carbon. This is the nucleus here. Sometimes they'll put a C in here to represent the actual element's name here, or the symbol for the element. We can see that the first shell is holding 2 for it, and then this next shell is holding 4 because carbon has an atomic number of 6 and it has 6 electrons. This outer shell can actually hold 8 electrons itself, but here it's only holding 4. That's here. So in order for carbon has the ability to bond or form 4 bonds or covalent bonds that it can form with another atom or groups of atoms that it can go through. So we note when we take a look at carbon, the first energy level fills with 2 that are there for the carbon, which leaves a total of 4. So there's going to be 4 more electrons left when we look at carbon. And the second energy level, it takes 8 electrons to fill the second energy level. Because atoms like to have their outer energy level filled, it would take an additional 4 electrons. It would share an additional 4 electrons with other atoms. Therefore, we say carbon has 4 bonding sites when we take a look at it. So we can represent the bonding sites for carbon that look right here in this particular picture itself when you take a look at it. So this is carbon. These are the particular bonding sites that are going to be located there. So when we take a look at nitrogen, nitrogen has an atomic number of 7. So we know that the atomic number tells us the number of protons and electrons. So nitrogen is going to have 7 protons and it's going to have 7 electrons. We take a look at oxygen. Oxygen has an atomic number of 8. Therefore, we know that it has 8 protons and it has 8 electrons. This question here is asking you to use circles around the nucleus to represent the energy levels and dots to represent the electrons. Draw what nitrogen atom and oxygen atom would look like, is what you're going to do here. I misspelled like. Let's correct that there. So down here we're going to draw that electron shell diagram for nitrogen and electron shell diagram for the oxygen. So if you remember, nitrogen has an atomic number of 7. So I'm going to draw the nucleus right here. So right here is the nucleus. This is going to be the first shell that's going to be right here for nitrogen. This first shell is going to hold 2 electrons, so we'll draw an electron here. We'll put an electron here that we have there. The second shell can hold 8 electrons, but nitrogen has an atomic number of 7, so this outer shell is only going to hold 5 electrons. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then once we go around, then they're going to pair up. I'm going to put the 5th one right here. So there is a total of 7 electrons here, 2 in the first shell, 5 in the second shell. So that means that nitrogen has 3 bonding sites when we take a look at it. So there's going to be a bonding site here that we have. We can have a covalent bond that forms here, a covalent bond that forms here, and a covalent bond that forms here. So nitrogen has a total of 3 bonding sites that are associated with it. If I take a look at oxygen, like we said, oxygen has an atomic number of 8. So here's its nucleus right here. And then I'm going to draw the first shell is going to be here. I'm sorry if this circle is not perfect. But this first shell is going to hold 2 electrons that are going to be here, electron here, and there's going to be electron here. Remember, this is the nucleus. These are the 2 electrons that are here. This second shell that I'm going to draw here. So this is my second shell for oxygen I take a look at. We've already used up 2. It has a total of 8 electrons, so I'm going to draw 6 more here. So there's going to be 1 here, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is going to be, we're going to make a bond here. This will be 5. And we're going to make one here. Another, not a bond, but we're going to make these guys pair up. So now there's a total of 6 electrons, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 electrons on the outside shell here. Therefore, there's 2 open bonding sites. There's a bonding site that can be right here and one that can be right here. So oxygen has 2 bonding sites when we take a look at that can form covalently. And remember, a covalent bond that you guys learned in your physics class last year, your freshman science class, a covalent bond is when we kind of share electrons, is basically what's happening there. So now we know that carbon always has 4 bonding sites, and we did this initial one. We said that these are single bonds that are here, but there's also double bonds and triple bonds and things like that. But the main thing is carbon has to have 4 bonding sites. So when I take a look at this one here, this is going to be one single bond. I'm sorry, not one single bond. This is going to be two single bonds and one double bond. But still, this adds up to a total of 4 bonds. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is that diagram that's there. When I take a look at this diagram here, this is going to be 2 double bonds. But still, there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 bonding sites there, 2 double bonds. And this end one here is going to be a single and a triple. So this end one here is going to be 1 single and 1 triple bond that you're looking at. So if we take these different elements, we join them together, basically with carbon. This is going to determine the type of molecule that's going to be formed. Remember, I have a group of atoms. A group of atoms builds a molecule. Millions of different combinations are possible when we take a look at the carbon atom itself, which is why organic chemistry is such a large branch of science. In college, if you take organic chemistry, very difficult class to take. A lot of times kids will get into organic chemistry and do a lot of studying that's associated with it. But these carbon atoms that we join together can form straight chains that look like this. They can form a branch chain where we have a carbon and then we have a carbon that's coming off this chain, this straight chain. That's a branch chain. But a lot of times carbons like to form these ring-like structures as well. This is a carbon that's forming a ring-like structure. A lot of times when we draw this ring, we don't draw the carbons in. We draw the ring. If it's another atom, we'll draw the atom in, but if it's just a ring-like structure where these two lines meet, there would be a carbon there. We would just assume that there is a carbon there. We take a look at each formation is going to give the molecule different characteristics. What attaches to the other bonding sites also determines the molecule's characteristics. A simple carbon atom is methane. This is probably the most simple carbon atom. It's CH4. So we have a carbon and then I have a hydrogen that's bonding to it on each one of these because there's 4 bonding sites. Hydrogen needs to share 1 electron. So it has 1 open bonding site. So this is perfect for CH4 that's here. And this is methane that we have here. So remember, when we look at carbon, carbon has 4 electrons in its outer energy level. Therefore, it needs to have an additional 4 that it wants to share kind of with. Carbon likes to share, so it likes to form these covalent bonds. Hydrogen has 1 electron in its outer energy level that we have there, so it wants to share 1 additional electron with another atom, so it likes to share 1 with carbon. They kind of pass it along between one another, and then we have a covalent bond that's going to be formed. This branch of chemistry that's dealing with these carbons and hydrogens, we call these hydrocarbons. So these are all hydrocarbons. If I have a carbon with a whole bunch of hydrogens off of it, these are all hydrocarbons that we have there. So we've seen that this is methane. That's right here. This is a carbon with the 4 hydrogens coming off of it. You guys would have then got out your model kits here, and you would have built methane. And then you would have built ethane, which is going to be, we take a look at ethane. Ethane has 2 carbons with it, and propane has 3 carbons with it as well. And then butane has 4 carbon atoms that are associated with it, with the hydrogens that are coming off. So if I were to draw ethane, you would have a carbon here. Remember, it's 2 carbons, so carbon, carbon. You'd have a hydrogen. Another hydrogen. Another hydrogen here. You would have another hydrogen here. Another hydrogen here. And this is ethane. Note that all of these that I'm drawing, guys, are all flammable. So all these hydrocarbons are flammable. Ethane would look like that. Propane is going to be 3 carbons, so 1, 2, a 3 carbon chain that's going to be here. And you're going to have your hydrogens coming off of it. There's a hydrogen. And another hydrogen down here. So that is going to be propane that's there. You use propane in your grill, things like that. Butane a lot of times is found in lighters. It's a lighter fuel, but like I said, all these are flammable. You're just going to have 4 carbons are going to be here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to have a whole bunch of hydrogens that come off of this. So hydrogen here, hydrogen here. You have a hydrogen here, hydrogen here. Hopefully you guys are getting the idea with these hydrocarbons. Like I said, this is butane. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take these hydrocarbons, we're going to move one hydrogen, and we're going to add a functional group to the end of these hydrocarbons is what we're going to do. So the first functional group we have is called the hydroxyl group, and the hydroxyl group is an oxygen bonded onto a hydrogen. So this consists of one oxygen, atom when we take a look at it. So this consists of one oxygen atom. This also consists of one hydrogen atom. So one oxygen atom, one hydrogen atom is what we're taking a look at here when we take a look at a hydroxyl group. When I add this hydroxyl group that's here, now you look at this picture here, all this is showing here with this oxygen with these 2 little dots on the top of it right there and 2 little dots on the bottom is just showing that those electrons on there are paired up. So there's really only 2 bonding sites that are opened up for that oxygen. So oxygen has 2 bonding sites. Sometimes you'll see that written when they draw out structural formulas for things and stuff like that. But when I add a hydroxyl group to a hydrocarbon, okay, it makes it an alcohol. Okay, and we say alcohol, we add ANOL to the end of it. So this is going to be methanol. If it's a 3-carbon one, if it's a 3-carbon one that we have, remember 3 carbons is going to be propane. So this would make propanol that I would have there. If I was going to draw propanol, propanol would look something like this is what propanol would look like. So I'd have my carbon here, bonded to another carbon, bonded to another carbon, and then this carbon would have an O off of the end of it, bonded to an H. Sorry if that's a bad O and an H. That is there. And then this is the hydrogen, and this is the remaining of that hydrocarbon backbone that I have here. Again, I apologize for my writing with the mouse, but doing the best I can do. So this is that we take a look at there. So this right here, this functional group added on this hydrocarbon makes this an alcohol, and this alcohol that we built right here is called propanol. When we take a look at it again, this group right here is the hydroxyl group. So this group right here is the hydroxyl group, and this hydroxyl group is a functional group, and it added on to this hydrocarbon makes it an alcohol. This next functional group that we have is called the carboxyl group. It's a carbon bonded to an O, bonded to an H, which is double bonded to an oxygen. But this whole group here is what we call a carboxyl group that we take a look at. Sometimes when we write OH, we don't put the bond in between them. We just say OH. We take a look at the carboxyl group if we're wondering why there's not a bond. We're just assuming there's a bond between there. We draw these things out structurally. Sometimes chemists become lazy. So what it's asking you to do here is you guys would have went and you would have built a 3-carbon hydrocarbon. But when we have a carboxyl group added onto a hydrocarbon, it makes an organic acid. So what we're going to make here is what we're going to call propanic acid. So we're going to build something called propanic acid. So it's going to look something like this. This is going to be my carbon that's going to be here. So carbon, bonded to a carbon, bonded to a carbon. Okay, so this is my 3-carbon backbone. And now I'm just going to draw the carboxyl group coming off the end here. C, double bond, O, bonded to an O. That's bonded to an H. And then these hydrogens are going to fill in here for the hydrocarbon backbone that is here. And like I said right here, this is propanic acid that you're taking a look at. So this is propanic acid. that is here. So this is propanonic acid. When you take a look at propanonic acid, remember this group here is the functional group. This functional group here that we just talked about now is called the carboxyl group. Carboxyl group added onto a hydrocarbon makes it a organic acid. So this is propanonic acid. So the final functional group that we have is called the amino group that we take a look at. And the amino group is a nitrogen bonded onto a hydrogen bonded onto a hydrogen that's here. So this group is an amino group. It wants you to build a 3-carbon hydrocarbon to this functional group that's right here. I'm just going to draw it over here. Actually, I'll just draw it. I'll draw it over here for you to take a look at. So when I take a look at this, this is the nitrogen bonded onto the hydrogen, bonded onto a hydrogen. Okay, and then this is going to be added to a 3-carbon hydrocarbon that's going to be here. There's my carbon, there's my carbon, there's my carbon. This has the hydrogens off of it. But basically, this is going to build what we call an amine that we have. So this is an amine. The functional group that we just talked about is called the amino group. And these will become important, guys. Later on, we start talking about proteins and carbohydrates and things like that as well. So this functional group that I'm circling right here is called the amino group. That is there, an amino group added on to a hydrocarbon makes this an amine. So this is some of the practice you guys had to go through and you had to do. So when I take a look at the branch of chemistry that deals with carbon, this is organic chemistry. Carbon has 4 bonding sites because it has a total of 6 electrons. 2 fill the first shell, and the remaining 4 in the outer shell. When we take a look at it, that means this needs to share an additional 4 electrons. Remember, the sharing of electrons, that's called a covalent bond. We take a look at oxygen. Oxygen has a total of 2 bonding sites because it has a total of 8 electrons. It's going to have 2 electrons in the first shell, and it's going to have 6 electrons in the outer energy level. It's going to need 2 more electrons to fill its outer shell, so it likes to share additional 2 electrons is what it's going to have. So it has 2 bonding sites that are associated with it. We call these compounds made of hydrogens and carbons, and we call them hydrocarbons. So compounds made of hydrogens and carbons are called hydrocarbons. The difference between methane, ethane, propane, and butane, this is going to be the number of carbons that are in them. So remember, when we take a look at methane, it's going to be 1 carbon, ethane is going to be 2 carbons, propane is going to be 3 carbons, butane is going to have 4 carbons, with the hydrogens all surrounding these molecules. So the number of carbon atoms is going to change along with the number of hydrogen atoms as well. But the main difference is the number of carbons that we have in methane, ethane, propane, and butane. Remember, these are all hydrocarbons. They're all flammable. Atoms that act as groups to give hydrocarbons certain properties, we call these functional groups. So these are functional groups that we take a look at. This first one that we have here, this molecule here, this OH group, is called the hydroxyl group. So the name of this group is the hydroxyl. Remember, when I add a hydroxyl group to an actual hydrocarbon itself, it makes it an alcohol, so the molecule becomes an alcohol. The second group that we have is a carboxyl group. Remember, the carboxyl group that we have is a carbon that's double bonded. That's a double bond there, double bonded to an oxygen, that's bonded to an O, that's bonded to an H. And this carboxyl group that's added on to a hydrocarbon is going to make that molecule an organic acid. So down here we're going to write organic. Acid. I'm sorry, my writing looks like a third grader, but writing with the mouse is kind of difficult. The next group that we had, it was the amino group, and the molecule looks like this. So this is the N bonded to the H. That's bonded to another H that's here. So this group is called the amino group. And that's what's going to build an amine that you have here. Study this chart a little bit so you kind of understand these functional groups and actually what they make up when you take a look at them. If you have any questions or need any help, don't hesitate to see me in class. But that's kind of the introduction to the biochemistry packet that we did.